Lit. Roll up to the party. Roll up to the party. Roll up to the party. Roll up to the lit. Roll up to the party. Roll up to the party. Roll up to the party. Roll up to the
And we are live. We are live. It is, where's my phone? What time is it? It is 12:30 Celtic Park time. And there's no announcements as yet. But there is some breaking news this afternoon. We'll talk about that in a minute. It is the 29th. There's a few folk on. And we're going to talk about... I want to talk about social media and the players because, let's face it, Brendan Rodgers is getting absolute pelters on social media. And let's jump up, see who's on. Where's the pull up to the party song? I played it, did I not? Hail, hail, troops. Hail, hail, Paul. Hail, hail, Tamak. Hail, hail. From Germany is in the house. Let's see if we can get some of the Australians and that on this afternoon. Right. I want to talk about social media and I want to talk about, but first of all, let's talk about the news that Celtic have had a bid rejected for the Brøndby striker. No surprise there. Celtic bid 4 million. They want 6. They want 6 million. So it's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. We've known that they've wanted 6 million for quite a while, and the fact that we go in with a 4 million bid is just Peter Lawwell written all over it. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Right, let's get back to what the video's about. Let's talk about the squad today versus the 2003 squad under Martin O'Neill. Hail Helen. Let's talk about how they would compare on social media today. Because let's face it, social media, everyone has their say and it absolutely kills players. So I wonder how... And I'm going to look at the age of the squad first of all, right? So we're going to talk about Martin O'Neill's team in 2003. And I'll run through the team quickly. Henman, Varga, Balde, Petrov, Lennon, Thompson, Agat, Miller, Hartson, Sutton, Larson. Right. Henman, goalkeeper, 30. Varga, 31. Balde, 28. Petrov, 24. Lennon, 32. Thompson, 30. Agat, 28. Liam Miller, 22. John Hartson, 28. Chris Sutton, 30. Henrik Larsson, 32. Look at that team, right? That team compared to the youthfulness of today's team. And we're giving today's team and the manager absolute pelters when you look at the experience that Martin O'Neill drew upon. Now, let's talk about the size of the squad, because the squad that Martin O'Neill had was absolutely huge. This is substitute. You can, right? That's the first team. We'll agree that was probably the first team, right? So we'll go over the first team again. Henman, Varga, Balde, Petrov, Lennon, Thompson, Agat, Liam Miller, rest his soul, Hartson, Sutton, Larson. You've then got this is team 2 and 3. You've got Douglas, McNamara, Lambert, Valharan, Malby, Marshall, James Smith, Maloney, Stephen Craney, Mohamed Salah, Michael Gray, John Kennedy, Bobby Pettit, Craig Beattie, Ross Wallace, Stephen McManus, Stephen Pearson, and Michael McGovern. There are about 50-odd players that the manager could pick from, and they're all a decent standard. We're giving the current manager, and I'm not going to try and go over about Michael was the first comment, Baz. I never said it. So you were there. So you were, Michael. Sorry about that. Michael, yeah, hopefully some good news today. Well, we'll talk about this first and then we'll get on to the transfers. So I want to talk about the facts. I mean, how would that team have compared to today's social media? Because let's face it, the weakness in that team for me was Didier Agat. Didier Agat was good for one thing, and I've watched a couple of videos this morning for 2003, and Ajay is going to Turkey tomorrow. Thank goodness. Agat would got pelters because all he did, I mean, he could run up and down the wing all day long, but his finishing ball sometimes was really poor. And then could you imagine the stick that that guy would have got in this day and age on social media? And I'm talking about the fact that we're giving like young Bernabe. Young Bernabe's been at the club for a year now, and people are like, "Get him away from Celtic. He's not Celtic class." But he's never really had a chance, you know. And it's difficult for players when they come from other parts of the world to a new country. I mean, I know how difficult it is coming to a country and not understanding the language. So do we give our players too much stick, and are we too reactive? Have we been too spoilt over the last couple of years? I mean, because when you look at that squad as well, if you look at the substitutes, I mean, Paul Lambert's a substitute in that team. Paul Lambert was a Celtic legend. You know, Malby, substitute. David Marshall. David Marshall will go on to have one of his best games for Celtic ever against Barcelona in years to come. But he was just young at the time. Young Sean Maloney, Craney, John Kennedy. I wonder whatever happened to that lad. Whatever happened to John Kennedy? The man that can never get sacked or leave the club. But anyway, it does his job. It does his job. Like there's 63 people online. Let's see how many thumbs up. Thumbs up. So tell me in the comments how you think that squad and what player. I mean, Bobby Pettit. Do you know, it wasn't the best of players. Ross Wallace would get absolute pelters today if there was social media about it. You know, he would get absolute pelters. And why? Because he was Scottish. Stephen McManus the same. Pearson used to get pelters back in the day anyway. Michael McGovern, the young keeper. Young Maloney came through. You know, it is unbelievable that the size of that squad and how good it was. And we've got the current manager who's scrambling around, trying to get in some signings. And people are now saying, look, this is panic buying. This is panic buying. Any good bars in Malaga for Sunday? Check out CelticBars.com. They've got the list of all the bars. And I know the guy that runs CelticBars.com. He's actually based in Alicante. Did you believe it or not? Anyway, if Martin O'Neill was here now, would you be moaning about our players? I like to do the talking on the pitch and not social media. I think Martin O'Neill understands that the way that the game has changed. And it's interesting because I wish I'd actually, if I'd thought about this, and it was interesting that Celtic have just put out a video of a team for back then, trying to get everybody fired up and having good thoughts. Celtic have been pretty quiet on social media ever since the weekend, especially on Instagram anyway. And it's only today, Tuesday, that they're starting to put stuff out. Bobby Petter's best game was against Ajax. Couldn't believe he scored. Yep. Hey, Baz. And Postecoglou was there, did the transfers and quick, but now Rodgers is back to 2019 when Rodgers left, first time. Postecoglou had to come in and make a lot of changes. We keep going back to hands, right? And it's like we can't. The team needed a complete overhaul back then, right? Did the game where Juve was, yeah. But then you've got to admit, Martin O'Neill would go absolutely mental, and it was shocking, absolutely shocking. That was Martin O'Neill's favourite. That Juve game was unbelievable. And you've got to remember, at that time, Juventus were absolutely fantastic. They were a fantastic team. Getting back to the Chanty Po 1888 comment, we got the transfers in quick. Yeah, because we identified what we needed and we worked on markets where we could get them in quick. We weren't expecting. Right, I'm going to turn this round on you, Chanty Po, right? Did Ange Postecoglou leave because he knew that we didn't have the depth of the squad for the quality that was required? He did say before the end of this, in his very last interview, look, never mind talking about me leaving, some of these players could leave. And I said in this morning's video, we're 4 or 5 first-team players down on last season. Ange Postecoglou knew that the quality wasn't there in the background. And that's been the problem that we've come in. You know, Brendan's come in and he's said, look, he said, yeah, we've improved the squad. And Ange used to say, yeah, as long as the squad's better when we come out the transfer window, You know, it's like as long as the squad's better, but it's not as well as you have, as the first team has to be better. You can't have a team. The average. Look at the age of that team that I just spoke about. Right, I'll go back. You might have missed the start of this video. Martin O'Neill's team. The age of his team: Magnus Henman, 30; Varga, 31; Baldi, 28; Petrov, 24; Lennon, 32; Thompson, 30; Agat, 28; Miller, Liam Miller, God rest his soul, 22; Hartson, 28; Sutton, 30; Larson, 32. The average age of our current team is 23 years old. Do you know, I think we need to give the team a bit of slack, and especially on social media. And the question today, how do you think the likes of Agat, because Agat had a lot of bad games, how do you think that that team would compare if we had the same level of social media today as we did back in as for that team in 2003? Can you imagine the level of intensity and all the stick that goes around with it, and just all the abuse and everything, and then the comments and the negativity? Do you know what would the price be of that team in 2023? Wow, exactly, exactly. You know, we were buying them we were buying that team in 2003. We were spending 6 million plus on near enough every player. I think the cheapest one in that squad, apart from Liam Miller, who came through the team, I think the cheapest one was Varga, and then Agat. Agat cost us next to nothing. Agat cost us. I mean, at the time, Larson cost us 650 grand. Could you imagine that in today's money? You cannot get a player like Larson if for that kind of money. Anyway, I need a drink. And if you must know, it's the coconut edition of Red Bull. Coconut edition. We had strength and height and sexy football. That's what I remember. I don't think it was so much sexy football, was it? We had speed in the team, and teams never sat back. Now, Ali, we'll talk about this. The difference between a Martin O'Neill team back then is teams attacked. Teams didn't sit back on their 12-yard box, right? Teams didn't sit back and not even trying to get over the halfway line. I mean, you look at the game against St Johnstone at the weekend, our two defenders were in the St Johnstone half. Every single player, apart from Joe Hart, was in their half. Martin O'Neill team, we got a gap for 50 grand. There you go. Do you know what I mean? It was pennies. And I remember Martin O'Neill saying that we could, if he could fulfill his talent, he'd be a 30 million player. Yep. Teams are shit scared to get pumped 10-0 from us these days. Exactly, Mark. Exactly. So they sit back. I could guarantee you that team, of Martin O'Neill's team, right? The way that that's set up, they would struggle. They would struggle. Because we relied on pace on that team. We relied on pace. Petrov coming through the middle. We relied on pace of the Gat and Thompson down the wings. You know, Sutton was the big. I mean, Hartson used to never get in the team. If Sutton and Larson were in the team, Hartson was never in the team. Do you know? Larson was stealing the century. But my question is, tell me in the comments, what do the Red Bull give you wingers? Yeah, it does. How do you think that team and the level of scrutiny that players get in this day and age, how do you think that they would have coped if they had that? Do you think that they would have been as successful as well? You can't really say as successful because there's been teams in the modern era that's had that level of scrutiny and social media, and they've been just as successful. I think my point is we're seeing a lot of reaction stuff on social media just now, and I think it is it is disappointing the way the things are. But hopefully, Celtic get their finger out and up their bid for the Brøndby. But he's a young guy. He's a young guy for Brøndby, and is that really what we need? A talented youngster from Brøndby. We bid 4 million. They valued him at €6 million, and we £4 million. The manager said that we need to go out and we need to get people the age of the Martin O'Neill squad. We need to bring in, and I'm going to go over it again. I'm going to even look at the bench, right? We'll look at the bench because this is where it gets really interesting. This is where it gets really interesting, right? So you look at the squad players. Douglas was 31. Rob Douglas was 31. McNamara was 30. Paul Lambert was 34. Valhanen was 27. Malby was 32. David Marshall was only 18 at the time, right? James Smith was 23. Maloney was only 20. Craney was only 22. Mohamed Salah was 26. Michael Gray was 29. John Kennedy was only 20. This is where we need to start thinking, Celtic fans, right? John Kennedy, 20. Bobby Pettit was 29. Craig Beattie, 19. Ross Wallace, 18. Steve McManus, 21. Stephen Pearson, who we got from Motherwell, was only 21. Right? He was only 21. That's it. He's only a year older, a year younger than Turnbull. He's only a year younger than Turnbull. And then Michael McGovern was only 19. Look at the age of those players that we brought into the team. We're now sending players at that age out on loan. Out on the loan. Channel Paul Baz, been loving the channel. I'm new, cracking the channel. Maybe 2 months and a half. What? I'm trying to say. Oh, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Channel Paul. Yes, and they're all Scottish. They're all Scottish. You know, I agree, but look at the stuff Lennon went through. Do you remember him asking Larson to stop putting his tongue out because the kids were copying him? You know, yeah. Could you imagine if that was on social media in this day and age? Do you know? It's unbelievable. We can't afford the Anil years. Sutton would be 10 million plus. Hearts in the same. Petrov. Yeah, they know. And Larson was one of a guy. But the thing that I'm trying to get over with this video and this live is the age of the squad, the age of the first team. The average age of the first team, when you look at it, is about 29-year-old when you average all the age of it. You know, the average age of the current team that we have just now is 23. It's probably a video that should have did where there was more people on it so that we could have a bigger conversation about this. There's only 75 people on it. It is a lunchtime show. I didn't expect to. What stick would you of Larson have got after his first game? Exactly. Larson passes it to Chick Charnley in the middle of the Hibs midfield, and he hits an absolute screamer for outside the box. Right? And kids, if you haven't watched it, if you're watching this on the replay, if you haven't watched it, go and watch it. Go and watch Larson's first game. And how would people have reacted to that online in this day and age? You know, if you could take the online presence that everyone has now and then take it back to 2003, my God, I take pity on those players. Why are we not giving youngsters a chance? Look at Ben Doak at Liverpool, first team. We're going to lose Vata. Ben Doak's on the cusp of going into the Scotland squad. This all comes back to the conversation that we had about the league. And it's funny because the amount of people that come on and say, you're talking nonsense. The league would be so many dead games, too many dead games. And it's like, there's not really another league in the world that's the same size that would say that. Martin was a sociological magician, said things to his players to entice reaction, whereas Brendan's more a player of being a beautiful human. Do you really think that? Is that what got him the 7 trophies the first time round as manager? Is that what got him to have Liverpool, if it wasn't his Slippy G's fault, winning the league? Anyway, it's just food for thought, and that is all. And when you look at the age, I mean, it's the age of the players that gets me. The age of the players. And I mean, the youngest one in the squad was Liam Miller, and we lost him to Man United. Remember, he was a young one that walked. And when you look at the other ones that stuck around, Kennedy, Craig Beattie would go on to score. Craig Beattie was only 19 in 2003. He went on to score one of the most important goals against Barcelona. No, it wasn't Craig Beattie. No, it wasn't Craig Beattie. Shut up. Look at Ross Wallace. He went on to have a decent career at Celtic. Steve McManus. Pearson was only 21. Do you know? Anyway, let's move on. Let's get some Celtic news that is breaking the day. Let's get some comments in. The money has been killing the game, and I have to blame Souness. Yes. But we reversed that a bit, right? They did come in and they spent because the English players. Now, to remember the only reason that Souness and the old Rangers got so many good players from England is England teams were banned from Europe at that time, and they wanted to play in Europe. They knew if they wanted to play in Europe, they would have to leave England, and to, to get to then go to Rangers and then get regular Champions League football. That's all they want. It's torrential rain and flooding in the Philippines. Well, I hope you're all right. I know what it's like when you get really bad rain. When we get it here in November, we get the rains. November and March, we get the rain. Yeah, sad having a 6-week winter. Hail, hail, troops, says Paul Imrie. Rodgers doesn't become bad overnight. We need to back him. We do need to back him. And when you look, it would be interesting to do what I should have done for that video. This actually was look at Brendan Rodgers, the average age of his team the first time round. And that would have given us, and then compare the three. Compared Martin O'Neill's team. Let me just see if I could do this live just now. Give me 2 seconds. See if I can. 2017. Right, here we go. That's 17, 18. 2017, 2018. We'll get the right. This is interesting. Now, I've just given you the stats for and the age. Compare the ages, right? Compare the ages of the Martin O'Neill squad. So I'll run through it again for anybody that missed it. There's people came on, right? So Martin O'Neill's team, successful, 2003. Henman, 30. Varga, 31. Baldy, 28. Petrov, 24. Lennon, 32. Thompson, 30. Agat, 28. Liam Miller, 22. Hartson, 28. Sutton, 30. Larson, 32. Brendan Rodgers' squad in 2017-2018 season. Are you ready for this? Craig Gordon. That can't be right because it said he was 35 then. Lustig, 31. Tierney, 20. Joseph Simonovic, 23. Scott Brown, 32. James Forrest, 26. Nitchung, 21. Rodgick was 25. Stuart Armstrong, 25. Callum McGregor was only 24 at that time. Scotty St. Clair was 28. So even that year, you had an older team. Let's look at the youngsters that were coming through. There's not as many as, you look at the squad, right? You had Scott Bain, 26, Griffiths, 27, Boyata, 27, Bitton, 26, Dumbelli, 21. Dumbelli was only 21 then. De Veers, 37. Paddy Roberts was only 20. Christopher Aya was only 19 in the squad at that time. You've got to remember that Chris Aya was brought in by Ronnie Dyler as a young guy. Johnny Hayes was 30. Ralston was only 19 at the time. Eric Sajenko was only 26. Christian Gambia was 28. Osborne Edward was only 19, right? Azagiri was 31. Charlie Masonda, you remember him? 21. Jack Hendry, 22. Jack Hendry was only 22. And we sold Jack Hendry far too cheap and far too young. Do you regret selling Jack Hendry? Anyway, right, let's get back. The board are at it, I think. That was interesting just to get the different age brackets compared to, even the squad that you had first time round. Okay, the average age of that squad is probably around about 25, which is a good age for a squad. The oldest player was Craig Gordon. There's no way was he 35 then, was he? No way. Yeah, he probably was. Craig Gordon was the oldest player in the squad. And everybody, he's the same age. Right, there's one. Craig Gordon that's saying there was 35, right? Joe Hart is 36, and everyone's saying he's done. Everyone's saying he's done. Get him out. We need a new keeper. Get him out. He's done. Get a new keeper in. He's only a year older than what Craig Gordon was, and he's got way more experience than what Craig Gordon ever had. Everybody is shouting out for him to play back three against St Johnstone. Hindsight's a great thing, but I was calling for a back three before the game started. I think when we know that teams are going to sit back, we need to play with a back three. The manager has to be able to change formation more than what he does. How many different languages in our team now? I wonder what they'll talk about. Well, they're all learning English, so you pretty much speak English. So it's the same here in Spain when we speak Spanish to the Spanish. The Ukrainians that stay down the stairs, they speak English to us and Spanish to the Spanish. And they said the same about Gordon as well. Yeah, said the same about Craig Gordon. And then at that time, Craig Gordon had a good few years left in him. Right. Anyway, that's an interesting look at both ages of the Martin O'Neill squad back in 2003. The average age of his team was probably 29. The average age of his team back in 2003. He had a massive squad. I mean, the squad player that was actually in the team, the highest number was 47. 47. So that tells you the size of Martin O'Neill's squad. Brendan Rodgers at that time, he was only 44 as a manager. And the highest squad number, well, it's crazy because by that time, people are wanting crazy numbers like 88 and stuff. So you can't really compare the squad numbers then because people are just wanting squad numbers when they're not in the first team. They're just wanting a number that's special to them or thinks it's going to make them special to the fans. The average age of the current team is about 23. So is it time that we stop giving the manager as much stick? Let's see this week out and then let's back the team and the manager to hopefully let's get all these injuries out of the way because let's face it, when we one thing about the 2003 team, it was a real contact game. Yeah, it was still a contact game, but you still had the same referees and the same referees that were against us and same referees that would give everything to Sevco and everything. So there's not a lot changed within the actual game. Right, let's get back to some Celtic news. Obviously, we've had breaking news this afternoon that Celtic have had a £4 million bid for the Brøndby striker Mateus, basically knocked back. Everyone knew the past couple of weeks that they were talking about 6 million, and we've went in with a cheaper one. We're expecting that our new winger is going to arrive in Glasgow today. He should be in Glasgow by now, I would have thought. There's nothing been officially announced by Celtic. Albion Ajeti is finally going to leave the club in the next 24 hours. So that's great news. It's fantastic news. We got some good news after all. I think the big one is the fact that we've had this £4 million offer knocked back. Why did we go in with such a low offer? Why did we know that the club isn't in a hurry to sell them? We know that the club wants to try and keep a hold of them, and we go in with a silly little offer of 4 million where they actually value them at 6 million. It's just Celtic all over. Age doesn't matter. It's the length of playing time in professional. Ali, Martin O'Neill's team in the squad had 18, 19-year-old players in the squad. In the team. Maloney was 22. David Marshall was 18 at the time. If they're young enough, play them. It's nothing to do with the age of the, it's nothing to do with how long they've played football. It's the fact that we now are not, the fact that we now are not bringing through our youth, we're not keeping them at Celtic, we're not bringing enough through into the first team, we're not giving them that chance to shine, to shine for us. And then we're going out and we're buying prospects from another country. Yeah, you're right, PJ Martin. It is. It's because Lawwell was in the building, and it's unfortunate. Why can we not? If there's a young guy coming through the team, and he's good. And the talent, we've let it all go. We've let it go. And look at Ben Doak. He's in the Liverpool team and he's on the periphery being called up to Scotland, the Scotland squad. The players play for money, not the shirt. Yes, but we can go in and right. This is exactly what I was just going to talk about, Kevin. We can go in and we can bring a player in like Palmer, who was on 70 grand a year. If you put a young boy at Celtic on 70 grand a year, he'd be ecstatic. Instead of giving them 600 quid a week, give a young boy that's coming through the youth system 70 grand a year, and he'd be ecstatic at that at the same age. Now we're bringing in a young guy that was on 70 grand a year. We're now putting him on 500,000 a year because we think he's going to be better than what we've got because we're not giving youth a chance. Anyway, what's there to be said? That's half an hour in. If there's anything else kicks off this afternoon, I probably will do another live because it's good to get everyone's comments. Hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me if you enjoyed this type of video where we looked at the squads. It was really interesting the way that we looked at the squads. We looked at the Martin O'Neill squad from 2003. And then we looked at, later on after that, we looked at Brendan Rodgers' squad in the season 2017-2018 to get the average age of the players then. And it was quite a difference. Even the team, the good thing about it is the manager at that time did build a team that pretty much stuck around to go to the 9 in a row. It was a team that could age together, and they did. You look at Scott Brown. Scott Brown was only 32 then, you know. James Forrest was only 26. James has just had his testimonial. When you think of players like that, Callum McGregor was only 24. Callum McGregor's now your captain. You know, it just goes to show that the current squad that we have and the age of the players, it is unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Right, if there is any news comes out this afternoon, I think the breaking news today is obviously the fact that we've had that offer rejected. Albion Ajeti is away. He is due in Turkey. Good luck to him. Glad to see the back of them. And then on that note, have a fantastic afternoon, and I'll see you on the next video, which will only be in a couple of hours, so make sure you stick around for that. Might go live around about 5:15 Celtic part time. So if I don't see you before, I'll see you then. Have a great day, Celtic fans.
Lit. Roll up to the party, roll up to the party.